I know I was supposed to have a fights ranked video out, but I just finished the script, and oh boy, let me tell you, 10,000 words long. That's about as long as my Volume 9 review, which was a little over an hour long. So yeah, that's gonna take a while to edit. So instead today, we're just gonna have a conversation. This is the second time I'm doing this type of video, where I give you, the viewer, a question, both sides of an argument, and I let you decide the answer to said question. And of course, I give my answer as well. Last time the question was, would you like to live in the High School DxD universe? And I think most people said that they would. This time I have a spicier question, one that's more debated in my comments, and that's, would High School DxD be better without the fan service? Obviously, I make a lot of High School DxD content, and I try to ignore the fan service for a variety of reasons. One, I want to highlight the other things that High School DxD does good outside of its fan service. Two, I've said this a million times, but I just don't find anime characters that attractive. I'm not really a waifu kind of guy. Obviously, it's fine if you are. That's kind of the whole point of the series. And then three, because of YouTube's rules, it's hard to mention fan service with the strict guidelines that they have. But because of my formula of not really talking about the fan service and only focusing on other areas like the story and the character work, I and a lot of other people in my comments have questioned if High School DxD would be better without the fan service. Now, I go back and forth on whether or not I think the series would be better or more successful without the ecchi aspects, and I can definitely see both sides of the argument. Obviously, when people like me hear the question, the immediate answer is of course. Like, imagine High School DxD without all the excessive fan service, cut out all the ecchi scenes, and you're left with an action, comedy, reincarnation, magical, religious, mythological, romance with a side of vampires type of anime. So even without the ecchi/harem elements, there's still a lot there. Some things do change, like Issei would be a completely different character. His perversion would either be completely removed or it would be reduced. It wouldn't be such a major character trait like it is right now. No more peeping in on girls' locker rooms, no more boob power-ups, no more pervert finishing moves. The goal of being harem king technically doesn't have to change, but for the sake of the argument and to make things more interesting, I'm gonna say we're removing the entire harem element from the series too. So no more harem king goal. So his other goals take the forefront, becoming the greatest pawn of all time, becoming his own king, protecting the people he cares about, and then of course getting stronger than a select few characters that he likes. So just with this, a lot of scenes would play out completely differently. Issei vs. Volley doesn't have a boob power-up anymore, so Azazel would have to find something else to motivate Issei. He could be motivated by his love for Rias, or maybe there doesn't need to be another power-up, he can just will his way back into the fight without having to rely on that. Same with the Kuroka fight, where he pulls out his balance breaker for the first time. Instead of unlocking it by poking Rias's boobs, he uses his frustration to unlock it himself. During the Soso fight, he wouldn't have the pervert crystal, so he would need something else to unlock his new abilities. The talk with Elsha would just turn into like a motivational speech that overflows Issei with confidence. It would be a completely different mental battle, kind of like the one that Gasper goes through throughout the series. So obviously Issei wouldn't have his perverted powers like dress break. That would be replaced by something more ethical. Booby lingual doesn't really change. I guess there are a million ways for him to be able to read other people's thoughts, but of course it would just play out completely differently. So just there's a lot of major changes, and that's not even mentioning the actual character dynamics. Like, without the harem aspects of the story, there really is no reason for there to be so many female characters. Like, I feel like some of them definitely would get gender swapped, like Irina. Irina would definitely become a dude. I think that's the only one that would for sure change genders, so I'll leave the other characters how they are for this scenario. But then that kind of creates a problem with these characters' roles in the story. Since we're removing all the harem aspect, these characters need something else to focus on other than Issei. I think you can still have a few of them crushing on Issei, but definitely not all of them and as many as they do now. So I'll just say that Rias, Akudo, and Asya are still in love with Issei, romantically, since those are the main three anyway. But obviously Issei himself would only want Rias. But I actually think this scenario with these characters actually benefits the other characters a lot more than the current situation they're in. Imagine if all the characters were independent and fleshed out, instead of just being like semi-fleshed out, getting bits and pieces of their backstory and how they feel. Without that that reliance on Issei, they would have a lot more opportunities to shine, and they could focus on other things and have other goals. They can all still be a happy family without being attracted to each other. And this kind of applies to almost everything in the series. A good chunk of the screen time is taken up by the fan service and the ecchi moments. If you were to remove all these elements from the anime, there would be a significant amount of time to focus on other character stories, or they could put more effort into fights, or character relationships would be deeper. Like, imagine if every character got their own Kiba style story arc, where we have an entire arc dedicated to one character, which some of the characters obviously do get a level of development through certain arc, but with more time they could go into even more depth with their backstories and their motivations and their reasons for why they are. We wouldn't have to wait until volume 18 to care about characters like Roswaisa and Idina. Like, these things can happen significantly faster, so we could care about these characters a lot more. Instead of just seeing them as Issei's harem member, they could be their own independent individual character. It really would help us understand why characters are the way they are. Like, motivations would be more clear and character actions would make more sense. Or if you don't want to do that, this extra time can be used to give other characters more prominent roles. Characters like Azazel. Azazel is extremely important to the story, but he gets such a limited amount of screen time that it kind of goes overlooked. He's our exposition guy. He tells us everything. He's Issei's mentor slash teacher. He plays such an important role in the story, but again, that limited screen time that he has just holds him back. With more time given to characters, we could get a more developed relationship between Issei and Azazel, Issei and Sir Zex. Azazel could be the mentor that they're kind of trying to make him be, but they're only doing it halfway right now. You can build out that big brother relationship that they're trying to do with Sir Zex and Issei. Like, there's a million ways to go with these side characters that don't get nearly as much screen time as the main girls or whatever. Or even if you don't want to do that, you could put more effort into the fights. A lot of DxD fights rely on emotion and they have a lot of talking, and that becomes more of a focus rather than the choreography and the actual time spent fighting, which it works for the series that it's in because it has a bunch of fan service in it. You're not really expecting extremely high quality fights, but if you take that fan service away, you could dedicate more effort to making those fights, you know, shonen level. We could get actual fighting. We can get better animation. Imagine if every fight got the same amount of effort as Issei vs. Cyro-Org. And then imagine if even that fight was given more effort. That would completely change how High School DxD is viewed as a whole. That would almost change its entire genre and shift it into more of a shonen type genre. So just with any one of these major changes, you're looking at a pretty different story. Without the fan service, there's a lot more room to create a deeper meaning through just putting more effort into other avenues outside of just ecchi. But by far the most interesting part of this conversation is the fact that a lot of stories are left mostly unchanged outside of just the minor tweaks. The Rainier trauma arc plays out the exact same. Issei's still a loser who's never had a girlfriend, and that's all he really wants in life. Rainier still randomly asks Issei out and becomes his girlfriend. She still kills him. Issei is still reincarnated as a devil. He still goes on to become friends with Asya, which leads to him running into Rainier again. Rainier still captures Asya, which leads to him having to save her. He still goes to the abandoned church just to have to watch Asya die in front of him. He's still completely broken after the loss of his friend, and he still is able to snap on Rainier and beat her. Rainier still plays the mind games at the end of the fight, and Issei is still left permanently scarred with the possibility of this happening again. So that whole part of the Rainier trauma is left unchanged. Now, the actual effects afterwards could play out in a few different ways. One of them is, instead of Rainier trauma applying to all the girls romantically, it can just apply to them platonically. Issei loses his ability to trust anyone, and that's only made worse by the fact that everyone he fights looks down on him. Volley, Soso, Shalba, Diodora, Kuroka, Riser, Ravel, Kokabil, all these people Issei ran into look down on him, which only further shatters his confidence. That's why he's so reluctant to accept Azazel's help. That's why he's so taken aback by Cyro-Org's compliment. He just doesn't trust anyone anymore. You could have it go that route, or you could just still have it apply to the girls. But for the most part, the Rainier trauma arc stays intact. You just have to change the actual effects of how it goes. But since the trauma already only mainly impacts Issei and Rias' relationship just in the anime, that isn't going to change at all. That's going to stay the exact same. That beautiful back and forth romance where neither of them know what they truly want. They just both know that they love each other, but they both don't know how to say it. Both of them would still be held back by a sense of fear and a lack of confidence. All of that stays the same. The clubroom scene stays the same. The characters lifting Issei up by letting him know how much they love him. The essence of that scene stays the same, but it would definitely play out differently. The characters would obviously have their clothes on, and Kiba and Gasper would likely be added to the conversation. So it's arguably a better scene. You still get a beautiful conversation between Issei and everyone he helped up until this point, except it might even hit harder because there was more development to these relationships without the fan service. The moment itself would probably hit harder because the characters aren't naked, so it's not there to distract you. So the essence of this scene, one of the best scenes in the series, is arguably made better without fan service. A scene like the anime version of the Juggernaut Drive just becomes the canon version. Kiba still has his Holy Sword project. Issei still has his beautiful conversations with characters like Akeno and Gasper. All of this are still there without the fan service, and it's arguably only enhanced by a DxD story without fan service. Getting rid of the ecchi objectively creates a more coherent story with more character depth, more world building, better action, better emotion. It creates an overall better story. But at what cost? What is High School DxD? Fundamentally, it's a harem anime that tries to incorporate every genre you can think of. But who is Issei without his perversion, without his silly boob drive, without his desire for a harem? Who is Issei? He's a completely different character. Without all of that, you're left with a massive hole to fill. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, Issei's perversion is such a core part of his character that taking it away from him would make him unrecognizable. He just becomes Deku with cool armor. Yeah, he still goes through hardships, he's still traumatized, but he loses what makes him Issei. And I think the talk that Issei has with Elsha during the So-So arc does a good job at explaining this. Issei isn't like everyone else. He's different from Bali, he's different from So-So, he's different from even his friends. He has his own unique way of obtaining power. A conversation as good as the one that Issei and Elsha have becomes completely pointless when Issei is just a normal dude who powers up in a normal way. There's nothing for him to come to terms with. There's nothing for him to accept because he's just a normal guy. I talked about the Rainier trauma and how it still works without the fan service, but again, the long-lasting effects of it do change, and that might make it worse for some people. When the girls have that romantic love for Issei, it makes more sense why Issei would hesitate around them, and it makes that hesitation more effective when it's romantic instead of platonic. It also hits harder. It makes more sense. And of course, it allows the trauma to be hinted at more often. You can't get moments like that Rainier nightmare scene in season 3 without the fan service. A lot of these storylines do still work without fan service, but they also work with fan service, so what would be the point in changing that? What happens to the main cast? Without their romantic love for Issei, a large chunk of their relationship building is gone. You would have to replace that with something else. They were able to build a realistic relationship between Issei and Akeno, Issei and Rias, Issei and Asya. And yeah, those don't necessarily have to change if you remove the fan service, but they still feel different without the fan service. You lose the essence of these other relationships when you get rid of the harem aspects, and that kind of applies to everything. The tone and the themes of High School DxD, they rely so heavily on fan service. You lose the comedic timing, you lose a part of Issei's character growth, you lose the relationships. These things are altered and shifted to an almost unrecognizable degree. So when you make these changes, you're fundamentally changing everything about High School DxD to the point that it isn't High School DxD anymore. You're looking at a completely different show. And yeah, that show might be better, but it's just not the same thing. It's not what people love High School DxD for. People love High School DxD because of how goofy it is, of how they're able to mix these other serious aspects into a genre as unserious as the harem genre, the ecchi genre. They're able to make you care about certain characters by giving them their own arc. They're able to make you care about certain relationships by creating thoughtful and emotional conversations. They're able to combine every genre genre almost and make it enjoyable, entertaining. It's just such a fun watch. When you remove such a core part of that, you lose the meaning of High School DxD. Is it still High School DxD without the dumb boob power-ups? Is it still High School DxD without Issei's silly dream of becoming the harem king? Is it still High School DxD without moments like this, or moments like this, or this? These are some of the best moments that you lose when you get rid of the fan service. You lose High School DxD. You're creating a completely different anime. So is it worth it to cut up and butcher everything for a potentially better story? Like I said, I always go back and forth between whether or not the series would be better without the fan service. I mean, ultimately, I definitely do think the show would objectively be better if you were to get rid of the fan service. But again, at the same time, it just wouldn't really feel like High School DxD without it. I'm obviously not the biggest fan of the fan service, but I also recognize that it's the biggest reason why people watch the show. So I think most people's answer would be different than mine. I think the actual solution would be to find a happy medium. Maybe just turn down the fan service without fully ditching the creator's vision. That's probably the best way to make everyone happy. Because once you go too far into the fan service, you lose the character relationships, you lose the depth, you lose the story. But at the same time, once you go too far into the story, you lose the personality of High School DxD. You lose the character of High School DxD. It just becomes its own new show. So the actual solution would be to find that happy medium. So would High School DxD be better without the fan service? Meh. I guess it depends who you ask. And there goes that video. I was really planning on getting that DxD Fights ranked video out by this weekend, but like, there was no way that was happening. I didn't think the script would be as long as it ended up being. So yeah, a 10,000 word script. That's gonna take me a few weeks to edit and to get right. It's gonna be a long video, so I guess you can look forward to that. I'm pretty sure we got some new members, so I'm gonna go ahead and shout you guys out. Matthew, Bear, King Ryo. Thank you guys for subscribing to the membership. I got a strange video I'm working on next. But yeah, I don't know how long the fight video will take. Probably a few weeks, but we'll see. But anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And thanks for watching.